Good afternoon, denizens of the internet. This is your SitRep for 13th of February 2022. It is currently 12:05 Australian Eastern Standard Time. Welcome. For those who didn't come on yesterday, I'll just explain what this is all about. This is just situation reports. So I read a lot of the news, I pore over things, and I'm always thinking about how these things are going to affect what we need to prep for, where we can kind of aim our preparations, being that we've all got limited time, limited resources, limited money, so we can't just go out and buy all the things and do all the things all at once. So what should I be concentrating on? What should I maybe be not worrying about too much? And in the world at the moment, there's a fair amount to worry about. So I'm not here to stress anyone out, but just so we can see what's happening in the world. Get a bit of a snapshot, and then maybe a little bit of information, or I'll try and angle this towards my opinion of what you might want to be preparing for in the short term. All right, so I'm going to start off in the Ukraine conflict, which is on everyone's mind at the moment. And for those who don't get it, like what's going on, the bigger picture here, I did see one news source finally come out, and they said something along the lines of the amount of information that's coming out may have something to do with the military-industrial complex. And no shit. Halliburton and Northrop Grumman and all these sort of companies that are going to make a billion dollars, a gajillion dollars out of a conflict that US is involved in. They are pumping this sort of stuff, and they want it to happen. So just before I jumped on, I saw another little news release. It was from RT News, I think, that said that Ukraine officials are still saying, like, hey, where are you all getting this information? Like, this is not what we're seeing on the ground. So the picture, you have to understand, the picture we're getting in our Western media is extremely inflamed. But because it's so inflamed, Russia is seeing our news as well, and it is actually inflaming the entire situation. Whereas Ukraine are trying to maybe throw a bit of a wet blanket on it at the moment. So this information that I'm going to give you, now put it through that filter. Lot of Russian movement in the last 24 hours or the last 12 hours. A lot of Russian movement apparently outside of what they were saying are their, what would you call it? Their designated zones for their military exercises. So they're saying that everything they're doing here is legit. They're all meant to be there. They're just running exercises. It was all planned. It's all okay. But now we're starting to see reports of some of these forces being found outside of those designated areas. So that's interesting. A hornet's nest there is starting to buzz. There was explosions around the town of Donetsk, and I apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly, Donetsk, or Donetsky, or I don't know how to say it. But that's in Ukraine, but that's in occupied Ukraine. So that's the eastern side of Ukraine. So some explosions were one large explosion was initially reported. The Ukraine side came out and said, oh no, that was just a simultaneous release of artillery, mortars, and gunfire, which, doesn't make a lot of sense that you'd let one big bang out of a whole heap of different things at once and then nothing else. So it sounds like something's happening there, but we don't know what. And the other big thing that was coming out of the news was that the Russians have said they found a US sub in Russian waters, which is very naughty. They shouldn't be doing that. I couldn't find anything from the US side, whether they confirmed or denied it. But all this is saying to me, there's a big picture here. All this is saying to me is that there's a lot of rhetoric going on. There's a lot of talk, and there's a lot of excuses saying, hey, there was a bang here. Maybe we should go in. Hey, there's a US sub here. That gives us an excuse to go in. And that false flag attack sort of thing that everyone's been talking about and everyone's been worried about is a high potential from both sides. So we're hearing in the Western media that Russia is going to do a false flag attack and blah, blah, blah. Well, US or NATO forces are just as likely to do that as well if they want to instigate this thing and kick it off. So There are two sides going on here, two sides to this fight and two sides to the media war, and we're only getting the majority of one side of that torrent of information that's coming through. So that's something to think about. All this information that's going on there, it looks like it's escalating there. Ukraine is saying it is not escalating. There's nothing out of the ordinary going on right now. But both Russia and the US are saying that this thing's about to kick off. And US has given it a week. They're saying within a week, Russia will invade. So, you choose who you want to believe. One side, other side, no sides. I will say this though, if you cast your mind back to not so long ago, USA was saying things like, well, this country has weapons of mass destruction, and UK was backing them up and saying, yeah, they've definitely got weapons of mass destruction. And then, EU and a few other forces like the UN even were saying, yeah, they've definitely got weapons of mass destruction, we should go in there. And it turns out that they didn't really even have weapons of mass destruction. So, that's what we need to think about. Why do they want to start a war? Well, I think that's probably tied in. My opinion on this is it's probably tied into the financial system at the moment. People are testing the wind and they're seeing that this thing's probably about to tank. And when financial systems tank for individual countries, for powerful countries, that almost always initiates some form of war or invasion. So fallout from this, as far as, how do we protect ourselves here in Australia and what do we need to think about? The two big things I think we need to think about resource-wise are natural gas and petroleum products. So both of those are coming out of Russia into Europe as a whole, and that will be turned off very quickly. And we know that if you've been following this at all, the European situation, their natural gas bills have gone through the roof. So they're having, their winter is obviously very cold. They need that gas to heat a lot of people, a lot of cities. And the price of that has been going through the roof, like much, much, much more than we would expect seeing inflation at the moment. So they're going to have trouble with gas. They're going to be desperate. It's not like here in Australia, like if you didn't have gas, it means you can't cook a barbie. Tragedy, I know, but you're not going to freeze to death in most of Australia if you don't have natural gas, whereas in most of Europe, you will. So they've already got agreements from the US to have natural gas brought in. They've got agreements from Australia to have natural gas brought in. So does that take natural gas away from us? Yes. But the bigger thing is that the increased demand is going to increase price in natural gas for us. So if you are somebody who relies on natural gas, I would suggest going and stocking up on more of it. Even if you're just getting an extra one or two of those standard size LPG ones for your barbecue, or like I've got some of them, and I've got one of those big ones that usually get plugged into a house. I've got one of them spare as well. So that's what you want to think about. Fuel wise as well, fuel is going up and staying up. I just saw in my town, it hit the $2 mark. Well, actually it hit the 199.9 cents. And I'm just going to go on a rant here for a second. When in Australia have we ever used 0.9 of a cent, point whatever of a cent for anything? It's the most ridiculous fucking thing I've ever heard. Why don't you just call it 1 cent? Why does it always have to be 0.9 of a cent? Shits me to tears. Anyway, and we don't say 200 cents, we say $2. So why don't you just put, it's $2 a litre, all right? $2 a litre for premium petrol at the moment. I remember I grew up in the 80s, and I think late 80s, maybe early 90s, and I think it was early 90s, petrol hit $1 a litre and people lost their fucking minds. They were like, this can't go on. Like, no one's going to be able to drive anymore. It's all over. And now it's hit $2, and I'm not really hearing that much from people. It's like our population is so beaten down. It's sort of like, oh, it's $2. Okay, well, yep, fair enough, whatever. And I just wonder how far up it has to go now for people to start going like, whoa, this is serious. Even diesel's at 180, I almost did it, $1.80, which is pretty exy. So our fuel, for those who don't know, the European situation, again, is not going to directly affect us. It's more of a second-hand effect that's going to happen there, in that we may have to import or export some of our fuel out there if they're desperate for it, which is going to increase the price of it. yeah, so Shanae Parker, I think that's how you say it, just said, we're so distracted with other things I didn't notice until this week. And absolutely. I think it's something that I'm like acutely aware of. I'm always on it, and I'm always telling people, and they're like, oh, okay. It's like people don't really care what the price of fuel is, but paranoid individuals like me do care. So the fuel sort of thing, I would recommend, I can see it maybe coming back down. There might be some reasons why it's just pumped up at the moment, and it may come back down. But I can see fuel skyrocketing, within as little as a month. I mean, honestly, if things kick off over there, fuel could skyrocket very, very quickly. Being that Russia is an exporter of fuel, so that could change the situation in the world. So as a recommendation, and I say this always, first off, your car, half is the new empty. That's what I want you to think. Half is the new empty. Your car should never be under half full. You stress me out when people let their car go down to that bottom part of the E and then go like, oh, it's got another 50 Ks in it. That stresses me out. Don't do that. Just go and fill your car up regularly. If it gets down to half, fill it up. That way you've always got at least half a tank, which most cars, that's probably 200-300 Ks that you're going to get out of it. And then the next thing, maybe think about Jerry's and stuff like that. So I've got a series of Jerry's, and or fuel canisters, 20-litre fuel canisters. So I rotate them. So I'll put one into my car when it needs 20 litres, and then I'll put that in the back of the ute. And next time I go fill up with diesel, I'll fill that up. So that's something you want to consider as well. Otherwise, you may not have a car. Or you may have a car, but it may not work. Okay, so what I want to talk about quickly, or maybe not so quickly, just depending on things, is China, the situation with China. So my prediction here is that if something does kick off in the Ukraine, then China will probably use that opportunity to go into Taiwan and take Taiwan. That they've been signaling that for a long time now, years, and they've been increasing in their aggressiveness about it, and they'll start to do it. And they might even just do it piecemeal. So one of the theories is at the moment that they might go in, there's a series of islands around Taiwan, and when the time is right, they'll go in and take one island, and they'll see what the reaction is. Will US react to that? No? Okay, we'll take another. Okay, we'll take another. We'll take another. And all of a sudden, they'll have Taiwan pretty much surrounded within 10 kilometers of their coast. And, that's that. They've got it pretty much. Bulge just chucked up there, absolutely correct. Higher fuel costs, will they add to food costs? Yes, they will, because most of our food in Australia gets driven to where it is. In fact, pretty much all of it. There's very few places in Australia that make their food and then put it straight on the shelves. So any increase in fuel is going to have a pretty direct and quick effect on the price of food, being that truckers are going to have to pay more for petrol or for diesel, and as soon as that happens, they're going to start charging more, and that's going to just filter straight down through the distribution train and will end up at your local supermarket, where they'll go like, well, price is going up. Coffee. It's the only reason to live. Stockpile more coffee as well, if you haven't already. So, China, Taiwan, I was just talking to a friend, and she just put me into contact with somebody else who's quite cluey, ex-military person as well, and he told me that there are two primo times to act on Taiwan, and that has to do with weather patterns. And he sent me the links to the weather patterns and things that are going on in Taiwan at the moment. So 2 times a year, that would be more beneficial for China to actually conduct operations in that area, and we're coming into one of them right now. So a lot of things lining up there. Also in China, one of their a very large developer called Zenro just dropped by 66% on the stock market. So big property developer. That's another big thing, and this has been in the pipeline for a long time. Those of you who don't know the Evergrande saga that happened, Evergrande was one of the largest, if not the largest developer in the world, and their stocks just absolutely plummeted. The whole arse fell out of them, and they threatened to take everything with them. The entire Chinese property market, which would then take the entire Chinese stock market, which would then bring down everyone else's stock market, because we're all pretty tied into China at this stage. But one of the predictions was they're trying to do a soft landing, so the plane's on fire, both engines are burning, but they're trying to do a belly skid in. And one of the predictions from a lot of financial people out there is saying that this will have a domino effect. And I think people were expecting that domino effect to happen within 3 days, and it didn't. So everyone's like, oh, maybe it's all cool. But that domino effect is going to be a lot more stretched out. So keep an eye on stuff like this, developer companies in China that are going belly up or losing a lot of money very quickly, because that could bring down the Chinese economy. And as I said before, that's one of the pre-indicators that you want to look for warlike activity, especially within a developed and a powerful country, which China is. They have now, I think they may be ranked second in the world behind US, when you don't take into account allies and things like that. Their military force is second in the world. So they've got the power to do it. They've been setting this sort of stuff up for a long time. Again, if you haven't read a book called The Shadow War, I recommend you go read that, or Unrestricted Warfare. And then you'll understand exactly what China's doing, what the game is here, and how they're basically playing out Sun Tzu's The Art of War perfectly. Right, so if this kicks off, if we see China do this is going to have a much larger direct effect on what happens with our resources here in Australia. Obviously, our fuel is tied into Singapore, so think of how closely Singapore is geographically to China, what that's going to do, how that sea area around there is all set out, and then you'll be able to see like how big of a deal this is, in that it could potentially, in my opinion, this could potentially, if something kicks off there, sever Australia's fuel supply. Even though we do have fuel supplies here within Australia, but we send them off seas to Singapore to be refined and then come back. With everything in the world at the moment, that's how things go. That's not actually a weird thing right now. I mean, everything's weird, but it's not out of the ordinary. So, these are the sort of things that you want to start to look for. Again, fuel, a big one. If you can start stockpiling a little bit of fuel, I would recommend doing that now. In fact, after this video, I'm going to duck up and fill the ute. By the way, I'm doing this video because I'm heading off to the mountains for a few days as of tomorrow, so I may not be able to do videos for the next, week or so. Okay, so COVID protests that are going around the world. Obviously, you may have seen in Australia, you may have even been there, the one in Canberra, it looked like a big success, a lot of people, it's really great, getting a lot of news coverage, some actually good news coverage I saw, which was utterly shocking to me, and then the usual rhetoric of, unclean bandits who are destroying democracy and our capital. But it all went off, not too many, there wasn't any riots or deaths or destruction or anything like that. Let's juxtapose that with France, what's happening in France, in Paris. And there is quite the opposite thing that we're looking at there. So rioting in France, but I was telling someone about this, that's nothing out of the ordinary. In fact, I have often said that rioting, I think, is the national pastime of Parisians, that they'll do it at the drop of a hat, and it doesn't matter what the cause is, they're always down to riot. DTR, those Parisians. So I wouldn't worry about it too much now. When we start to see it escalate in other parts of the world, then I'd maybe pay a bit more attention, or if it extends for a longer period. But the French, the Yellow Jacket protests / riots, that went for a long time, but that's pretty standard for the French. All right, last thing I want to talk about is how all this sort of information is pertinent to us as preppers or things we might want to think about preparing for in the future. As I said, fuel, so you want to think about this for not only your vehicles, but also gas for heating and or cooking. So maybe stock a little bit more of that, invest a bit of time and or money, your resources into that. Anything to do with energy as well. So maybe if you're starting to think about solar or something, along those sort of lines, now might be a good time to start going further down that path and investing in that. Food-wise, as Bolge rightly put up there before, food prices will rise. They are rising and they will continue to rise, and they could spike very quickly if we see a spike in fuel prices. So again, with food, start building out your pantry. Whatever's in your pantry, make it deeper, make it bigger. Start thinking about a long-term pantry or long-term food storage. So it might be emergency rations, it might be freeze-dried food, it might be camping sort of food, whatever it is. And even start to think about seeds as well. So for those who are following along, I posted a photo on my story and my normal posting that I got a bunch of seeds in recently. It's about $300 worth of seeds, and I got home yesterday after I went down to buy some more sealable barrels for food storage from the local hardware store. I got home and all those seeds were everywhere all over my backyard. My German Shepherd decided that it would be much more fun for her to self-plant them. So it's about $300 of seeds that was just strewn all over my backyard. So I spent most of yesterday afternoon on my knees picking up seeds and resealing them, making sure they were dry, and vacuum sealing them into bags, which was fun. It's great. The joys of dog ownership. All right, that's pretty much it that I've got for today. Again, keep your eyes on that Ukraine situation, but to do it through the lens of, what sort of propaganda are they trying to feed us at the moment. Keep your eyes on what's happening in China. Keep your eyes on what's happening with your food prices and your petrol prices. But that will pretty much wrap it up for today, 13th of February 2022. I'll hopefully try and get another one of these out, hopefully in the next couple of days, but I don't know what connectivity I'll have up in the mountains. Gonna try and get to the highest point in Australia. Oh, I said where I was going. Damn it. People know now. They'll hunt me down. Too early for a single malt. Is it though? Is it? It's after 12, so, I could, but I'm still on coffee. There's a point in the day where you go from coffee and you transition into whiskey and or beer, or mead. Until next time, if you've got any other questions, just pump them into me through DMs or through the stories. But yeah, until next time, guys, stay safe, keep prepping, and Semper Paratus.